I never liked dogs. There, I said it. I know that makes me a villain to half the population, but I've always been more of a quiet porch and a good book kind of guy. Not a walk me at 6 a.m. and don't forget the poop bag kind of guy. But I married Lena, and Lena loved dogs. So guess what we got 6 months after tying the knot? A rescue mutt named Cricket. Now, I will admit, begrudgingly, that Cricket grew on me. He was nervous as hell, all skinny limbs and shaking paws, the kind of dog that flinched at ceiling fans and ran from mailboxes. But Lena? She coddled that dog like it was a child. She'd sing to him, hand-feed him boiled chicken, and tuck him in like he had nightmares. She was obsessed. At first, it was cute. Then it was excessive. Then it was annoying. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being Lena's partner and became the guy who wasn't doing the right voice when talking to Cricket. That's when I should have known something was off. But hindsight's a cold, smug bastard. We live in a quiet farmhouse about 10 miles outside of anywhere that matters. Lena always called it our retreat, like we were escaping from something. Really, it was the only thing we could afford after she quit her job at the salon and decided she wanted to live intentionally. I kept up the electrical work in town, driving 30 minutes every morning into the city. She stayed home, took care of the house, and, of course, Cricket. Then came the trainer. It started innocently enough. Lena told me she met someone at the Saturday farmers market, a guy named Troy who specialized in canine anxiety. Said he worked wonders with shelter dogs, used nonverbal energy work, or some other pile of organic-sounding crap. I wasn't thrilled about a stranger coming to our home, especially one who charged cash only and didn't have a website, but Lena lit up when she talked about him. He understands dogs on a spiritual level, she said one night over dinner, like she was introducing me to some Buddhist monk, not a guy who clicked his tongue at animals for a living. I shrugged. As long as he doesn't charge extra for incense. The first few sessions, I made it a point to be home. Call me territorial. Call me paranoid. But something about the way she said his name rubbed me the wrong way. Troy. Like she was exhaling while saying it. Like the name had texture. He was tall, tanned, wore flannel even though it was July, and had the kind of teeth that made you suspicious of fluoride. He smelled like eucalyptus and motor oil. The kind of guy who'd sell you kombucha in one hand and a switchblade in the other. I hated him instantly. But he was polite. Too polite. Called me sir, and shook my hand twice. Once when he came in, and once when he left. Said Cricket had energy blocks, and that Lena was his emotional anchor. I didn't like the way he said that, or the way she smiled when he said it. After a few visits, Lena started scheduling sessions when I wasn't home. He works better without distractions, she said. I was the distraction, apparently, and that's when things started getting weird. Cricket, the dog who once barked at his own reflection, suddenly became calm around Troy. Relaxed, even. He'd sit by the door an hour before Troy arrived, like he could smell him coming. And the commands. Oh, the commands. Lena swore she was the only one working with him, but I'd say heel, and Cricket would sit. Say place, and he'd run to the porch. I'd never taught him those. And Lena? She couldn't explain them either. He's just a fast learner, she said with a shrug, like our dog had taught himself basic obedience via osmosis. One night, I came home late from a job in Dalesboro. I parked behind the house like usual, walked around front, and there it was. The living room light was off, but the glow of the TV flickered through the blinds. Lena's silhouette on the couch. Another silhouette leaning close. Laughing. Leaning again. I stood there for a long moment, letting the cold settle into my bones. Then I turned around, walked quietly back to my truck, and drove to the 24-hour diner off Route 6. Ate a dry BLT. Didn't taste a damn thing. I didn't say anything that night. Or the next. I just started watching. Listening. Piecing things together like a jigsaw puzzle I never asked to assemble. That's when I found the shirts. It was laundry day. Lena always left the clean clothes on our bed in sorted piles. His, hers, towels, rags, etc. This time, there was a fourth pile. 3 flannel shirts. Not mine. Different brands, all extra large. Smelled like eucalyptus and motor oil. I picked one up and held it to my nose. Cricket came trotting in from the hallway, tail wagging like he'd just heard a bag of treats crinkle. He jumped up, tail thumping, eyes wide. Bingo. That was the moment. The switch flipped. I didn't blow up. Didn't scream. Didn't storm into the kitchen and demand answers. No, I played dumb. I folded those shirts like they were mine and slipped them into a bag under the bed. Kept one out. Sprayed it with Lena's perfume when she wasn't looking. Hung it in the garage like bait. Cricket loved it. I started training him myself. Not with words. No, I used scent. Used treats. Used triggers. Every time he caught that eucalyptus note, he got tense. Alert. A few days later, I introduced a squeaky toy. Then a bell. Then a command. Stranger. Cricket learned fast. Lena never suspected a thing. She was too busy journaling in the barn, which I'm sure is code for whatever activities she and Troy were up to between bouts of nonverbal energy work. Last Thursday, she said Troy was coming for an extended session, something about deep bonding through scent imprinting. I nodded, kissed her on the cheek, and said I'd be working late at the Johnsons' place. I wasn't. Instead, I parked my truck 2 fields over, took the long way through the woods, and watched from the tree line. Sure enough, Troy's beat-up pickup rolled in around 4. He walked in like he owned the place, flannel shirt unbuttoned just enough to show the tribal tattoo on his chest. Cricket barked once from inside, then went silent. I waited until sunset. Then I made my move. I'll tell you what happened next, but not yet. Because that's where the game really begins. See, up until that moment, I was just the suspicious husband. But after that, I became something else entirely. And trust me, I followed all the rules. Just not the ones they expected. I stayed crouched in the brush behind the old oak for maybe 40 minutes. Long enough for the fireflies to come out, for my knees to go numb, and for the chorus of crickets, the bug kind, not the dog, to drown out the occasional laugh from inside our house, my house. Our farmhouse was never that loud. Lena used to whisper when she walked through the halls. But now, her voice was buoyant, too bubbly for anything casual. I heard her laugh through the screen door. Not the polite, hostess kind. The kind of laugh people save for someone who makes them feel like they're 15 again. Dangerous kind of laugh. The porch light clicked on around 7:15. I made note of it. Old habit. When you do enough wiring and circuit installs, you start seeing everything in voltage and patterns. A light turning on when nobody should be coming out? That's a pattern worth clocking. Troy stepped onto the porch with a beer in hand. One of my beers, because of course it was. I saw the label even from where I was squatting, and it wasn't something you just pick up at the store. It was a 6-pack I'd picked up on a work trip to Asheville, saved in the back of the fridge for a special occasion. Apparently, banging my wife qualified. He leaned on the railing like he'd done it 100 times, like the place belonged to him. Sipped, scanned the yard lazily, then turned and shouted something back into the house. I couldn't make out the words, but Lena responded with a kind of mock scolding I hadn't heard in years. Cricket trotted out after him. That caught my attention. Cricket didn't follow strangers. Cricket didn't even follow me unless I had chicken in one hand and a squeaky toy in the other. But here he was, tail wagging, plopping down right next to Troy like they were old war buddies. Something flickered in me. Not anger. Not even betrayal. Something colder. Like curiosity dipped in battery acid. What was it that made this guy so magnetic? What was it that Lena saw? More importantly, what was he doing to my dog? I didn't plan what happened next. Not exactly. But I'd had a framework in my head for days now. It just needed a spark. I circled around through the corn rows on the edge of the property, careful not to break any stalks. That sound carries. Anyone who's ever snuck out of a house through a cornfield knows that. I came up behind the tool shed, kept low, and waited until I saw the kitchen light turn off through the side window. Perfect. Time to knock over the first domino. I crept onto the porch, quietly, like the house was mine, because, well, it was, and reached into my coat pocket. Pulled out the old crowbar I kept in my truck. Not the best tool for finesse, but it made a good racket. That's what I needed. I didn't actually want to break in. I just wanted them to think someone did. I took the bar and rammed it against the porch steps twice. Loud, sharp, unmistakable. Then I slapped it against the siding and dropped it with a clatter. Inside, I heard Troy shout something unintelligible, followed by the unmistakable thunk of a beer bottle hitting hardwood. Good. I ducked into the shadow by the shed and waited. A second later, the screen door banged open. "Who's out there?" he yelled. His voice cracked. He wasn't used to being startled. Must be nice, going through life unafraid. I envied that for half a second. "Go check the dog," Lena shouted from inside. Typical. Brave man outside, woman behind the door. She knew how to delegate. But Troy didn't move. And that's when I triggered phase 2. "Cricket," I whispered. That dog's ears twitched like I'd fired a starter pistol. I saw his body tense, nose lift into the air. He sniffed once, twice. Stranger, I said. Soft. Low. Like a command wrapped in velvet. Cricket bolted toward the source of the eucalyptus-scented flannel I'd planted near the shed earlier that day. Not toward me. Toward the shirt hanging from the rake handle, still damp with Lena's perfume. But he didn't go for the shirt. He went for the porch. Straight at Troy. Now, I should clarify, Cricket isn't a violent dog. Not really. He's anxious, twitchy, scared of his own tail on a good day. But I'd spent the last 3 weeks conditioning him to associate that scent with high alert. Add the chaos of the crowbar, the sound of a strange man shouting, and the command he'd learned to fear, and you get a different animal. He didn't bite, but he lunged. Troy stumbled backward, tripped over the porch steps, and landed flat on his back in the flower bed Lena had planted last spring. Petunias and pride, both crushed in one go. Get him off me, he shouted. Lena burst out the door in a robe, phone in hand, shouting commands that Cricket ignored entirely. Cricket, no? Off. Sit. But Cricket was locked in. Not aggressive, just intensely focused. A low growl bubbled from his throat. Not the bark of a protector. The warning of a soldier mid-drill. That's when I emerged from the trees. Oh no, I said flatly, stepping into the glow of the porch light. Looks like something spooked him. Lena stared at me like I'd grown a second head. What are you doing here? I live here, I said. What are you doing here in a robe with Romeo? Troy was still trying to peel himself out of the flower bed, brushing dirt off his pants like it mattered. His shirt was ripped near the shoulder. You trained him to attack me, he shouted. Trained, I repeated, like the concept was foreign. He just reacted to a stranger lurking around the porch. Can't fault a good guard dog. You're insane, Troy snapped. He's dangerous. Lena looked like she was ready to cry, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Why are you doing this? That's when I saw the flashing blue lights reflect off the windows. Troy must have dialed 911 when he hit the ground. Or maybe Lena did, just to look innocent. Hope you've got your story straight, I said calmly, stepping back. The cop car pulled into the gravel drive, tires crunching like bones. I stayed still, hands visible, calm, collected. The officer stepped out, a familiar face, thankfully. Deputy Moore. Played softball with him 2 summers ago. What's going on here? He asked, scanning the scene. Looks like a trespasser spooked our dog, I said. He's been trained to alert us. Got a little overzealous. Moore looked at Lena, then at Troy, and then, like divine comedy straight from above, Moore's brow furrowed. Wait a minute, he said, staring at Troy. Aren't you Troy Deacon? Troy stiffened. Moore stepped closer. Didn't you serve time in Jackson for aggravated assault? You're on parole, right? Silence. Troy didn't answer, which was answer enough. Moore sighed, then pulled out his radio. Dispatch, I've got a possible parole violation here. Individual is trespassing and possibly unreported interaction with minors and animals. Requesting background check and backup. Lena's face went pale. Troy's jaw clenched, but he didn't run. He wasn't stupid, just unlucky. As they cuffed him in front of the flower bed, I crouched beside Cricket and gave him a scratch behind the ears. He looked up at me with those nervous eyes. Good boy, I whispered. Lena didn't say a word as they drove off with her spiritual dog trainer in the back seat. She just stood there, robe flapping in the breeze, mascara ruined, mouth slightly open like she was trying to form a defense that wouldn't come. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. Not happiness, not vindication, just stillness. I'll be inside, I said, stepping past her toward the door. She didn't follow, but the dog did. The thing about revenge is, once you've lit the fuse, there's no stuffing the fire back into the matchbox. People like to imagine it's a big cathartic moment. Scream, reveal, storm off into the night like some Clint Eastwood cowboy with a moral compass and a grudge. But in real life, it's quieter. Messier. It lingers. Especially when you still have to live in the house afterward. Sleep in the bed she shared with him. Eat toast at the table where they probably sat giggling while the dog licked their feet under the table. The night after Troy got hauled off, Lena didn't come inside. Not for a long time. She sat on the porch steps, robe bunched at the knees, staring out at the field like it owed her an apology. I left her out there. Not to be cruel. I just didn't care. That's the thing. I'd already mourned what we had. It died weeks ago. Maybe months. Hell, Maybe the minute she brought that first flannel shirt into the house and hung it next to mine. When she finally did come in, around 1:30 in the morning, she walked straight to the guest room and closed the door without a word. Cricket looked up from his spot near my feet and gave a soft whine, but didn't move. Smart dog. He was figuring out which side of the story mattered now. The next morning was a symphony of awkwardness. She came into the kitchen wearing one of my old hoodies, not out of sentiment, probably just the first thing she grabbed. But it made my coffee curdle just looking at her in it. "I'm sorry," she said finally, voice brittle. I didn't answer. I didn't know about Troy's past. I swear. I nodded slow. "But you knew about his present. That didn't bother you." She flushed. "It wasn't like that. He helped me with cricket. And it was emotional, not just." "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "I really don't need the Spotify breakup playlist right now." Silence. Just the quiet ticking of the kitchen clock and the occasional hiss from the coffee maker. "I'll pack a bag," she said. I shrugged. "Suit yourself. Or stay. Doesn't matter anymore." That seemed to shake her. Like she expected me to rage or beg or cry. But I had no tears left. No interest in post-mortem dissection. The marriage wasn't on life support. It was in the ground, with the headstone already chiseled. She didn't say anything else. Just turned, walked back to the guest room, and started packing. I heard the suitcase zip shut 15 minutes later, followed by the unmistakable creak of the front door as she left. No dramatic goodbye, just a dull thud as the storm door swung shut behind her. And that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. 3 days later, she came back. She had a key, of course. I'd forgotten to change the locks. She let herself in like nothing had happened. I was in the workshop out back, sanding down an old dresser I'd been meaning to refinish since before Troy ever oiled his beard on my porch. I heard the door creak. Heard Cricket's little alert bark. Then Lena's voice, soft and coaxing. "Hey, buddy, miss me?" Cricket didn't bark again, but he didn't follow her either. That was something. I walked in and found her in the kitchen, a Tupperware container in hand like she was here to drop off lasagna instead of guilt. "I just wanted to talk," she said quickly, seeing my face. "Not fight. Not accuse. Just talk." "Then talk," I said, crossing my arms. She hesitated. "I'm staying with my sister for now. But it's hard. I'm sure the guest room doesn't have the same energy aura," I muttered. She winced. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen the way it did." "Yeah, that's the problem with affairs. They never show up in a calendar invite." She sighed. "It wasn't just physical. He made me feel." I held up a hand again. "Let me guess. Seen. Heard. Whole. Don't mock me. I'm not. I just know the script." She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Look, I know I screwed up. But you trained our dog to attack someone. That's not exactly healthy behavior either." I snorted. "I didn't train him to attack. I trained him to identify threats. Big difference." "You weaponized him." "No," I said, leaning in slightly. "You weaponized our marriage. I just built a defense system." That shut her up. She stayed for another 10 minutes, mostly standing in silence, occasionally petting Cricket, who tolerated it but didn't lean in like he used to. That stung her more than anything I said. The dog always gave her affection like it was unconditional. Now, he looked at her like she was just another stranger trying to bribe him with treats. After she left, I finally called Deputy Moore. Not to press charges or stir the pot. I just wanted details. Troy Deacon, he confirmed. Assault charge from 2016. Parole until next spring. Not supposed to leave the county without notifying his officer. "Any chance this gets sticky on your end?" I asked. "Nah. You didn't do anything illegal. You scared him, sure. But if he didn't file a complaint, and given his record, he won't. You're in the clear. Besides, your dog didn't even bite him." "Good boy," I said, smiling slightly. "He might get slapped with a parole violation, though," Moore added. "We're still sorting that out. Let me know how it plays out." "You planning to press charges?" "Nope. I'm done with that part. Let the system do its job." "All right then. Take care of yourself, Brian." "I will." And I meant it. For the next few days, I kept the house quiet. Cleaned. Rearranged the furniture a little. Put Troy's flannel shirts into a cardboard box and took them to the burn pile out back. Cricket and I watched them curl and blacken. It felt good. Not triumphant, just final. That's when the letters started coming. Handwritten, folded into the mailbox without postage. No return address. Just my name and Lena's cursive. They weren't love letters. Not quite. More like apologies wrapped in memory. Remember when we first moved in? I made your favorite soup last week and thought of you. I saw your work van in town and almost waved. I didn't reply. She dropped off another the next day. And the next. By the end of the week, I had a stack of 6. Neatly folded. Tucked in the top drawer of the dresser, I was still sanding. I didn't burn them. Not yet. But I didn't read past the first line of each, either. One night, a week after the porch incident, I caught sight of her truck parked near the end of the property. Not close enough to be intrusive. Just barely visible past the corn. Headlights off. She was watching the house. Waiting, maybe. I didn't wave. Didn't go out. I let Cricket out onto the porch and watched her brake lights flicker as she pulled away. It was over. But that doesn't mean it's finished. Not yet. Because something didn't sit right. Not with Lena. Not with Troy. And definitely not with that last letter. The one that said, "There's something I need to tell you." It wasn't just me and Troy. Please read this before it's too late. That's when I realized this story didn't start when Troy showed up. It started long before. And maybe I wasn't the only one playing dumb. If you've ever gutted a fish, you know it's not the knife that tells the story, it's what spills out. Same goes for marriages, apparently. I thought I'd already filleted mine, laid all the secrets on the cutting board. But that last letter, that line about it wasn't just me and Troy, that was the kind of sentence you didn't just toss out unless you were hiding something rotted deeper down. I let that envelope sit on the dresser for 2 days. Part of me didn't want to open it. Not because I was afraid of what it said, but because I wasn't sure I cared anymore. You reach a point where betrayal stops being surprising. It's just background noise. But curiosity? Curiosity's a different beast. Quiet. Persistent. Has a way of scratching at the back of your neck while you're brushing your teeth or fixing a light switch. Cricket knew something was up. He kept sniffing the drawer where I put the letter. Stared at it, actually, like it gave off a smell no one else could catch. Dogs know. They always do. I opened it on a Tuesday morning. Same day the power went out for a half hour, which felt oddly symbolic. A little silence before the next shock. The letter wasn't long. Just a page, written in Lena's rushed cursive, the kind she used when she was nervous or lying. "Brian, I know you don't owe me anything. I know I already did enough damage. But you deserve the truth, all of it. Troy wasn't the only one. I didn't plan for any of this. It started with the guy at the feed store. The younger one, with the motorcycle. It was stupid. One time, I swear. Then a few months later, it was someone else. Someone I used to work with. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I got addicted to the attention. Maybe I was bored. I don't know anymore. I kept thinking you'd notice. That you'd ask. That you'd fight for me. But you didn't. You just kept showing up. Doing everything right. And I kept breaking things anyway. I'm sorry. Please don't hate me. L. I read it twice. Then again. Then I folded it back up and slid it into the drawer with the others. And I still don't know why I did this. I drove into town. To the feed store. It was the kind of place you could smell before you saw. Hay, fertilizer, and old lumber. The same 2 guys always ran it. Joe, the owner, who had arthritis and a permanent squint, and Danny, his nephew, who was maybe 22 and liked to rev his motorcycle like it had a personality disorder. I parked, went inside, and nodded at Joe. "Hey, Brian. Need more feed?" "Nah," I said. "Just grabbing some dog chews." He pointed to the back wall. Still where they always are. As I made my way down the aisle, I passed Danny, restocking shelves. He looked up, gave me a lazy nod. "Mornin'." I looked at him. Really looked. Tall, wiry, a hint of that smugness that comes from getting away with more than you should have. His sleeves were rolled, and there was a tattoo on his forearm, a compass with the letters L and B worked into the design. Not exactly subtle. I grabbed a pack of chews. Turned around. "You been working here long?" I asked casually. He shrugged. "Year and a half, give or take." "Ever do any deliveries?" "Out toward County Road 12. "Sometimes," he said, then grinned. "You the guy with the nervous dog?" I smiled. "That's me." "Yeah, I remember now. Used to drop bags off out there. Dog always barked his head off." "Funny," I said. "He usually only barks at people he doesn't know." Danny raised an eyebrow, probably thinking I was just making conversation. "Still got that motorcycle?" I asked. He smiled wide. "Oh yeah, ride it every morning. Gotta keep her loud, or she gets jealous." I nodded. "Right. Well, take care of her." He didn't realize I wasn't talking about the bike. Back in the truck, I sat for a long time. No music. No AC. Just the sound of wind rustling the feed bags near the loading dock and the occasional buzz of a fly near the windshield. Troy wasn't the only one. That was bad enough. But that meant Lena was telling less than half the truth during all those apologies. During the night, she cried on the porch. During the letters. All of it. And now I had a compass tattoo burned into my memory. L and B, Lena and Brian? Or Lena and Bastard? I could have gone home. I didn't. I drove another 20 minutes, to the edge of the industrial district. Pulled into a parking lot with cracked pavement and grass growing through the cement. Walked into the old salon where Lena used to work. She quit a year ago. Said it was too draining. Too shallow. Said she needed a break from toxic women. In reality, she just needed more time to host Troy and teach the dog nonverbal connection cues. The salon had changed names. New signage. But one of the old stylists, Clarissa, still worked there. She recognized me instantly. "Brian," she said, surprised. "Wow, haven't seen you in forever." "Yeah," I said. "Just passing through." We chatted for a bit. Polite stuff. Weather, gas prices, some harmless joke about her ever-changing hair color. Then I dropped it. "Hey, you remember Lena's friend from back then? Think his name was, what was it, Derek?" She blinked. I shrugged. "Guy she always texted. She said he used to do web design or something." Clarissa hesitated. "Oh, him," she said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Yeah, they used to get lunch together. Weird vibe, honestly. He was always hanging around. Kind of flirty, but maybe that was just him. You ever meet him?" "Once or twice. He gave me the creeps." I nodded. "Well," I said, "thanks. You okay?" I smiled. "Better every day." By the time I got home, it was past dusk. The porch light clicked on as Cricket met me at the steps, tail wagging like a metronome. I patted his head and gave him a chew. Then I went inside, straight to the junk drawer. I pulled out my old burner phone. The one Lena didn't know about. The one I used back when I was fixing illegal meters for folks who didn't want the power company tracking their usage. Everyone's got a past. I charged it, turned it on, and waited. When it lit up, it blinked with one unread message, 3 months old. From a number I didn't recognize. "Hey, not sure if this is Brian's. Lena said you might want to talk. Call me. Derek." Bingo. So I sat down, opened a beer, watched Cricket chew like the world wasn't ending. Then I called. He picked up on the second ring. "Hello." I didn't say anything at first. "Hello? Who is this?" I finally spoke. "You know who it is." Pause. "Oh, damn. Brian." "Yeah. This is awkward." "Yeah." He coughed. "Look, man, I didn't know she was still with you at first. She said you two were separated. She lies a lot. I see that now. You ever come to the house?" "No. God, no. We always met at her sister's place. Or at the hotel off Route 9. "Right. You looking to kill me or something?" I sipped my beer. "Not today." He let out a breath. "I'm sorry, man. Honestly, I didn't mean for any of it." I hung up. Then I stared at the wall for a while. Not thinking. Just letting things settle. The truth was ugly. But the stillness after? That part was clean. And I wasn't done yet. Because the next letter Lena dropped off had no words. Just a photo. Me, sleeping on the couch. And the note. "It wasn't only you who trained him." That's when I realized I wasn't the only one manipulating the dog. And I damn sure wasn't the only one setting traps. The photo sat on the kitchen table for hours. I didn't touch it. Didn't need to. I recognized the frame, the blanket, even the half-drunk bottle of seltzer on the floor beside the couch. That photo was taken on a Thursday, 3 months back. I'd worked a double, came home to an empty house, and fell asleep to a rerun of Columbo. No big deal, until now. Because the angle of the photo told me everything I needed to know. It was taken from the hallway, just past the kitchen, low to the floor. Not an accident. Not a casual snapshot. Someone had crouched, aimed, and snapped it quietly while I slept. But that wasn't the part that got me. It was the handwriting. It wasn't only you who trained him. That was Lena's scrawl, no doubt. I'd recognize the way she looped her T's anywhere. But there was something about the way she wrote that line. It wasn't just a confession. It was a dare. So I sat there, staring at the photo, my coffee going cold beside me, and I started putting it together. The changes in Cricket weren't just my doing. The sudden obedience. The new commands. The calmness around Troy. That wasn't normal, not for a dog that used to bark at wind chimes. Cricket had been trained from both ends. And that meant someone else had been working with him, probably for months. Now, I've always been a believer that when something smells off, you don't spray air freshener. You take the damn garbage out. So I made a list. Not a physical one. Mental. 3 names. Troy, already exposed. Danny from the feed store. Creep with a tattoo and zero discretion. And now Derek, the ghost from the salon days. But what if it wasn't just about the men? What if Lena wasn't just collecting attention for fun? What if she had a plan? That note, it wasn't written by someone guilty. It was written by someone proud. That's when I realized she hadn't dropped that photo to apologize. She dropped it to say she was still in the game. So I decided to up the stakes. I started with the dog. Over the next week, I spent every spare moment with Cricket. Morning, evening, even my lunch breaks. Not just feeding and walking, training. Deep training. I changed every cue. Swapped out commands like passwords. Stay became home. Sit became blue. Down became coat. I trained him on hand signals, finger snaps, even blinking patterns. And I didn't use treats anymore. I used objects. My coffee mug. A screwdriver. A key. Every day, I changed the item he responded to. Lena had trained him on food. I trained him on symbols. He picked it up fast. Smarter than I gave him credit for. Anxious still, but eager to please. Like he wanted to be reprogrammed. While that was going on, I dug into the past. I went back through Lena's email. The shared account she forgot was still logged into on the office desktop. She hadn't touched it in over a year, but the archives were still intact. I wasn't looking for love letters. I was looking for patterns. And I found them. There were appointment confirmations to a local vet clinic. One I didn't recognize. We'd always taken Cricket to Miller's out on Route 4. This one was in the next county over, small, private, open weird hours. She'd scheduled 3 visits over 6 months, each during weeks I was working nights. The kicker? 2 of them were marked with a service called behavioral immersion. Whatever that meant, it wasn't routine checkups. I printed out the emails. Drove there the next morning. The receptionist was a woman in her 60s, overly perfumed, with one of those smiles that's permanently stitched onto the face from years of customer service. Her name tag said Eleanor. "Hi," I said, walking up with a folder under my arm. "I'm Brian. My wife brought our dog here a few months back." "Cricket." She tapped at her keyboard. "Let me take a look." Ah, yes. Brought in by Lena. "That's the one. How can I help?" "Just had a few questions about what behavioral immersion actually is." Eleanor blinked. "Well, it's sort of a specialty program. Our trainer, Devin, does advanced work with canines who've experienced trauma or environmental confusion. Mostly former shelter dogs." "That's Cricket, all right." She smiled, then glanced at the calendar. "Unfortunately, Devin's no longer with us. Left last month. Moved to Arizona." "Of course he did. Do you happen to know what methods he used?" She hesitated. "Well, I'm not a vet, sir, so I'm not authorized to disclose specifics." I leaned in slightly, dropping my voice. "I think my wife may have been using these sessions for something else." Her face changed. Not alarm. Not surprise. Just recognition. She nodded slowly. "There were some concerns." "What kind?" "Well, I shouldn't say. But let's just say, some owners train dogs for obedience. Others train them to favor one voice over another." I exhaled. So Cricket's behavior might not have been entirely natural. Hard to say. I left her my number. Thanked her. And then I went home. Sat on the porch. Let Cricket lay beside me. I stared at the cornfield. Then the tree line. Then the driveway. I realized Lena had been planning this for a long time. Not just a fling. Not a mistake. She'd been building a bond with the dog behind my back. Training him to obey her, trust her, and ignore me. Then, once she had that bond locked, she introduced someone new, Troy. Someone else for the dog to imprint on. It wasn't an accident that Cricket stopped responding to me before Troy showed up. It was strategy. And now, her note, the photo, was her way of saying, "Your move." So I made one. The next time Lena came by, under the guise of grabbing some old clothes, I was ready. She parked out by the shed, like always. Same truck. Same half-ashamed, half-defiant walk up to the porch. I had Cricket by my side. "Hey," she said softly. "I just wanted to grab a couple things. Won't be long." "Sure," I said, stepping aside. She walked past me like she still owned the place. But she stopped at the top of the stairs when she saw the living room. I'd rearranged it, cleared the furniture to the walls, placed a single chair in the center of the room, facing the fireplace. On the chair, the photo she'd left. Framed. Beside it, a small speaker. "What's this?" she asked. "A lesson." She turned. "A lesson?" I snapped my fingers. Cricket sat. I pointed to the photo. He looked at it. I clicked the speaker. Her voice played, the command she'd used in the vet sessions. A soft whistle. A word, home. Cricket didn't move. Then I clicked another recording. Mine. A word, blue. Cricket stood. Walked calmly to my side. Sat again. Lena stared. "I changed him," I said. She blinked. "I untrained everything you did. Undid the games. Reset him. That's psychotic." "No. That's necessary." "You're using the dog to prove a point?" "No," I said. "I'm using him to show you what loyalty really looks like. You made him choose. Now he has." She didn't speak. Just stared at Cricket, who stared back, calm and still. I walked to the table. Picked up another letter, one she hadn't seen. I handed it to her. She read it. Her face turned white. Because it wasn't from me. It was from Troy's parole officer. A full report. Turns out Troy wasn't just out on parole. He was under investigation for a series of manipulative relationships with former clients. And Lena's name was mentioned in witness interviews. I stepped closer. I didn't press charges, but others did. She looked at me, eyes wide. "You should leave," I said. "But," I said leave. She did. And this time, she didn't come back. But the final move? That was still to come. Because revenge is never about the first strike. It's about who's still standing when the pieces fall. I always figured the end of something like this would come like thunder. Slammed doors, loud curses, maybe a final slap of honesty before silence took over. But endings aren't usually so theatrical. Sometimes they just walk out in hushed-toned disbelief, clutching a letter that burns hotter than any accusation. Lena didn't say a word as she left the house that day. Didn't yell. Didn't cry. She just walked. Like someone retreating from a slow-burning house fire. Not panicked, just resigned. And Cricket? He watched her go from the porch, ears twitching, but didn't move an inch. Like he'd already figured out the cast list, and she'd been written out. That should have been the last act. Curtain down, lights off, story wrapped. But the thing about revenge? It never ends clean. There's always one more thread you didn't pull. One more echo bouncing around in the attic. For me, that echo came the next morning. There was a knock at the door. Not loud, not urgent. Just steady. Cricket gave a low growl and sat up, tense. I opened the door to find a stranger, late 50s, maybe early 60s. Khakis, tan windbreaker, a clipboard tucked under his arm. Government energy or local council type. I assumed he was here about zoning or waterline checks. "You Brian Ellis?" he asked. "Depends who's asking." He offered a tight-lipped smile. "I'm Philip Meyer, private investigator, hired by a Mrs. Annette Deacon." The name slapped me. Troy's mother. He kept talking. She wanted someone to look into her son's entanglements. Seems she's been concerned for a while. His behavior. His parole violations. People he's been involved with. Turns out your name popped up. Mine. He nodded. Your name. Your dog. Your property. And most importantly, your wife. I stepped onto the porch, closing the screen behind me. "What exactly are you after, Mr. Meyer?" "Answers," he said. "Not accusations. But let's just say, Troy's not the first man to end up in a legal mess after meeting your wife. He's just the first to get caught." I stared at him. "You're saying there have been others?" "Two, by our count. Both former clients of the same behavioral vet clinic. Both men with criminal records. Both connected to women who described similar manipulation patterns." He flipped open the clipboard. Showed me a photo. Not Lena, but the woman beside her. That was unmistakably Clarissa, the salon stylist I'd spoken to a few weeks back. The one who gave me the creeps, according to Lena. I pointed. "That's Clarissa." He nodded. "We thought so. Looks like your wife wasn't operating solo." He flipped to another photo. This time, it was grainy footage, security cam still from outside the feed store. Danny, the kid with the motorcycle, was handing something small, a packet, maybe, to Lena. She was smiling, wearing sunglasses, hair up, like it was no big deal. "What is that?" "We believe it's a chemical pheromone training aid, used by certain behaviorists to override scent conditioning in dogs. Illegal in some states. Certainly unethical." My stomach turned. "Are you telling me they drugged my dog?" "Not in a narcotic sense. But yes, they conditioned him to respond to certain synthetic scents. It's why he lashed onto Troy so quickly. Why he ignored you." I leaned against the porch railing. Let it all sink in. You're saying this was organized? We're not sure. But your wife and her friend were involved in something deeper than a simple affair. Emotional manipulation, animal conditioning, targeting specific men. Why? Meyer shrugged. Some people get off on control. Others do it for protection. Sometimes it's just chaos for its own sake. What do you need from me? Nothing, he said. We just wanted to inform you that you may be contacted by authorities soon. You're not in trouble. But the web your wife spun, it's wider than anyone realized. I nodded slowly. Let me guess, Troy talked. He screamed. He left his card and walked off, his boots crunching down the gravel like punctuation. I stood there for a long time, staring at the spot where Lena had parked her truck so many times, trying to decide what had been real, what had been planned, how much of my life had been mine, and how much had been hers in costume. Cricket nudged my leg. I looked down at him, gave him a long stare. Still with me, boy? He barked once. Clear. Strong. No hesitation. Good. I didn't cry. Didn't rage. Just picked up the phone and dialed a locksmith. That afternoon, I changed every lock on the house, every code on the garage, every password on every account. Then I drove to the vet's office, the one Lena never told me about, and requested full records under my name. Had to sign a few things. Got handed a manila folder as thick as a phone book. Inside, session notes, schedule logs, behavior reports, and buried near the back, a note handwritten by Devin, the trainer who moved to Arizona. Client shows excessive attachment to canine. Requests training that emphasizes exclusivity of response, including reactions to jealousy triggers. Recommends termination of services. Dated 2 months before Lena stopped visiting the clinic. So Devin had walked away. Smart man. I spent that evening on the porch with a beer and a trash can fire. One by one, I fed the letters into the flames. The photos, the session logs, everything, except one thing. The note Lena left with the picture. It wasn't only you who trained him. I kept that, not out of sentiment, but as a reminder that even when you think you've taught the lesson, someone else might be teaching a different one. A week later, I got a voicemail. Blocked number. Scrambled voice. But I recognized the cadence. The lilt under the distortion. Lena, you won, okay? I hope you're happy. I lost everything, just like you wanted. But guess what? I taught him one more thing. You'll figure it out eventually. Click. I played it twice. Then a third time. Then I turned to Cricket. He wagged his tail, clueless. Or maybe not. That night, I tested every command I'd ever taught him. Old ones. New ones. My voice. Hand signals. He followed each one perfectly, until I said a word I hadn't spoken since all this began. Home. He froze. Tail tucked. Then he walked to the guest room door and lay down. The one Lena used that final night. The one she hadn't seen since. And I realized, she hadn't met me. She hadn't taught him something. She'd left something. Something in that room. I opened the door. And I smiled. Because tucked into the closet, half hidden behind a pile of laundry, was a USB stick. Labeled, fail safe. Game over? Not yet. Now it was my turn to set the rules. Subscribe to the channel